What if an innocent painting could bring disaster to your home? A picture of a crying child might just be responsible for dozens of fires across England.
But is it really cursed? Tonight on Zumundous, we pose the question, could a single painting be responsible for multiple house fires? For years, people believed the Crying Boy painting harbored a curse. But what's the real story behind this infamous piece of art? And welcome to Zumundous, episode 4. I'm Doolin.
And I'm Keith.
And we got some weird and mysterious stuff to get into tonight, particularly with some cursed artifacts, so to speak.
Yeah, this
if you
is
want,
our...
maybe not an artifact. That might not be the proper thing to say.
Right. Now,
cursed items. We'll just call them cursed items.
This is our first cursed item.
Yeah, first cursed item show that we've done here on Zumundous. Nor did we don't think we did it on Zumundo either.
It's adult first.
Yeah, so back in the 1980s, this really gained a lot of steam as a cursed item. So there was a series of paintings in the 1980s that were kind of mass produced and sold, and they went into a lot of homes. But the strange thing happened in a lot of these homes, and that is that not only did these houses burn down, not all of them, obviously, it was mass produced,
right, yeah.
But not only was it burned down, but the paintings themselves were kind of left unscathed by the fires. So
mysteriously,
let's talk about it a little bit. So
let's get into this.
Let's talk about the Crying Boy painting. So these paintings were allegedly painted by an Italian artist named Giovanni Brigolin.
Yes, that was his pen name.
That was his pen name. I think his true name was
Bruno
Amadio. Spanish painter was one who did it, but he signed them under the name Giovanni Brigolin. So he did these paintings in the 1950s, and it was a series of paintings known as the Crying Boys. Not all boys. I think there's a picture of
children,
but he was like
Doolin said, it's a whole series of paintings of different kids, and they all appear sad.
Like Picasso went through his blue period and his rose period. This painter did this thing where he was just painting like crying children for a while,
and these paintings got very popular.
Yeah, absolutely. And like once again, so it was like 1950s when he did this, and some years later they would be mass produced. But a little bit of an interesting story here. So the paintings depict young boys, sometimes girls, with tears streaming down their faces. That would evoke like a feeling of sympathy, but also maybe a little bit of a haunting quality. Maybe to some of these, like you've seen some of these pictures. They're like they're kind of like you look at it and you're like it's kind of sad, a little creepy. But,
it's weird.
But then it's like
I'd buy one of those.
But then like
up,
one of those kids is like staring into your soul from the painting at the same time. You know, like a little
it's
creepy.
It's almost like a Time magazine photo or something, or National Geographic. Like this kid's sad because you need to help.
Yeah.
It's like exactly. Oh yeah. Exactly.
For only pennies a day, you can sponsor a child.
It's kind of got that vibe as if you grew up in the 80s, you saw a lot of those commercials. Like we did. And these were actually, this story got very popular in the 80s specifically.
Yeah, well, and the paintings, like you said, very popular, and they started becoming mass produced in the late 1970s through the early 1980s, particularly, not so much here in the States, but over in England. They were really, really
very,
popular.
very popular, in Europe and especially England. From the 1950s onward, some of these paintings started going. And the painting we're referring to, the Crying Boy, is actually a specific one that seems to be associated quite a bit with these fires.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to tell a little bit of story, like some backstory about the painting, and I'm going to preface this by saying I read all of this on one of the websites that I was looking at, and halfway through, I was like, wait a minute, one of those things. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So according to Amadio, the painter, the subject of his most famous painting was, quote, a little street urchin that he came across while he was in Madrid. So the young boy was a mute orphan with a sad expression that instantly captivated him, and Amadio had stopped to paint the child when a Catholic priest, because I guess he was an orphan, a Catholic priest came over to him to issue him a warning, and he said that the boy Don Bonillo had run away after seeing his parents die in a fire.
Oh.
And since then, the fires of an unknown origin would break out wherever the boy went.
Yeah,
now,
nobody wants to adopt him. Right?
Yeah, because fires, like, it's the kid's curse. There's fire around him, right?
Fire starter.
Fire starter. Sorry, we're children of the 90s, sorry. So this happened with such frequency that this kid was given the nickname Diablo, which translates to devil, obviously, we know that. The priest warned Amadio that against having anything to do with the child. However, the painter ignored him and adopted the boy. And he brought Don Bonillo home to live with him and painted the Crying Boy series. And the story goes on to say that Amadio then had his house burned down, like it just burned down in a freak accident, and the boy along with it. Now, I read all of that, and I just said, from this website that I was looking at, I was like, no, I was like, no, this is too much. It was interesting enough to talk about, but also I felt the need to debunk it before we got any further. I went looking into it. I was just like, all right, I need a second source on this BS, right?
Okay.
So I went looking into it, and I found that first of all, I didn't see it on any other websites, but I found that these stories actually come from a book written in 2000. In the year 2000, so 24 years ago.
You're talking about the Diablo spot.
Yeah, the Diablo, like the little boy, like fires followed him wherever he went, blah, 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 blah.
Fire starter.
Yeah, so these actually come from a book written in 2000 that was inspired by what actually happened.
Okay.
So we're prefacing all of this by saying, like, this was like a huge urban legend in England, like starting in the 1980s.
And it did happen.
But it's been built up. So if you hear anything about like the boy is a cursed Diablo, that's kind of nonsense. So this got
like
sprinkled
an Exorcist
in.
Type
it's
thing,
like
right?
It's like a tall tale at this point, right?
The boy probably doesn't exist.
But well, maybe the boy existed. Maybe like the painter actually knew a boy who had come in and just had him sit there and then painted.
And then made him cry.
Yeah, made him cry.
Not
in the
make
painting.
him cry, but like made him
punched
cry.
him in the face,
like painting him cry. Yeah,
all right,
exactly.
now you sit there while I paint you.
We got other issues,
or I'll give you something to really cry about.
Finding sad kids, that's messed up. No, I think he just painted tears on him with sad expression or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So
but I mean, if you know how to paint faces, he could have made all these up too.
Yeah, of course. But so this painting that he did in the 1950s became really popular, and this was sold in large quantities in England. Often went to a lot of homes, and like once again, it's mass produced at this point, right? Like this thing's going out to a lot of houses.
Prints were big. Have you ever bought a print of a painting?
Of course, yeah. I think I have too.
The two pictures we see you painted. So
I have a couple of paintings that I did myself here.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I own like a Salvador Dali print. I think.
Yeah, of course.
It's not the original. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the image of the crying child seemed to be really popular, so it sold a lot of copies. A lot of families liked it, despite its kind of creepy nature. I guess I don't know why you want to put a picture of a crying boy that you don't know up on your house, but it was the 1980s in England, man. I don't know. I wasn't in England in the 80s.
Yeah. There's probably parents being like, when I was a kid, this is what it was.
They might have been busy eating baked beans cold from the tin.
Well, I mean, they might have been just torturing their kids from the 70s, Generation X. Like it used to be rougher. We walked uphill both ways, backwards with no shoes. Yeah, I'm sure our friend Chris, who listens to the show, will have something to say about this. Yeah.
So,
he might have seen one of these as a kid.
He might have. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's about our age. But imagine your home burns to the ground, like tragic event, right?
That's not
Obviously,
good, yeah.
It's not a good thing. But among the ashes, as you're going through the ashes, like, oh my God, my house burned down. I'm gonna go through the ashes and see what I can salvage. Everything's burned down, but one thing remains untouched, and that's the painting of this crying boy.
First of all, that in itself is kind of weird.
A little weird.
Paintings are on canvas, and canvas can be made out of things
burns
that are flammable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, paper and and canvas.
And right? But apparently, this exact instance happened more than more than a few times.
Well, this is where it gets weird.
This is where it gets a little weird. And this is where, like, so, you know, I debunked the crazy story at the beginning, but let's talk about, like, some of the things that really happened. And
Right.
so first we're going to start in early of September of 1985.
Yes.
All right. So this whole story kind of entered the public domain when a Yorkshire fireman, Peter Hall, was quoted in a national newspaper as saying that the fire brigades across northern England had found examples of the same picture remaining untouched in fires whose causes remained unknown.
Right. So these were things that weren't arson. They weren't,
They don't
electrical
know.
fire.
They looked at it.
They're like, oh, we don't know.
They couldn't figure out like what caused the fire
Yeah.
exactly.
And fire science is pretty legit. Those people are very intelligent, and they can usually figure it out.
I mean, it's usually, even in 1985, which is not that long ago.
No.
But they could look at it like,
they were
okay,
probably
electrical fire,
sophisticated.
like they could figure out like what started the fire. But these were all cases of homes that burned down and they didn't know why.
Well,
but they found this painting in those houses that didn't seem to be burned too badly.
And one of the reasons he spoke out is because his brother, Ron, didn't believe the story. He deliberately bought a copy of this painting to disprove the jinx. And he found it in his home in was it Swallowness,
South Yorkshire. Yeah,
it mysteriously burnt down soon after he bought this painting. I'm not laughing at this.
I know,
it's not funny.
it's. I mean,
and he goes, seeing that the picture had been removed intact from the charred ruins, Ron Hall put his boot through it. He kicked it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Like
makes sense.
he was
I'd be
just
mad.
like he was just like, I'll prove to you that there's no. I'll buy the painting, and then his house burns down, which immediately like that raises an eyebrow. You know, like, well,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's scary. And maybe the painting is
could be
the fire starter.
fire starter.
I know. I'm going to think about that.
We're
the
gonna be
entire
doing
time we're
Prodigy.
talking about this. Yeah.
I got some other ones here. Dora Brand of Mitcham
Okay.
saw her house just basically burned to ash 6 weeks after she bought the painting. And although it was among others she owned,
Okay.
it was the only one that survived the fire.
Ugh.
Here's another one. Sandra Kraske of Kilburn said that she, her sister, her mother, and a friend all suffered fires since buying the painting. Now, I don't know.
So they all bought copies of the
They all
painting.
bought copies of the painting. They all had fires
That's
in their room.
crazy.
Now,
We don't know
I
what
don't know
extent,
No,
right?
I don't know. I don't know, like if the house burnt down completely to
Right.
ash, but they bought it and there was fires in the house in some way or another.
Well, in the 80s, we talked about this being a popular thing. October 21st, 1985, the Perio Pizza Palace in Great Yarmouth, Norfolk, was gutted by fire. And although it's prominently displayed the crying boy picture, it stayed pristine through the whole thing.
Exactly. No, that's crazy. That's a great point. And then 3 days later, October 24th, we have the Godford family of Herringthorpe, South Yorkshire. They lost their home to an unexplained fire. And these are all documented. Like you
Yeah,
go
this
see
is
these.
real. We're not making this up.
And then the picture displayed in their living room stayed unmarked while pictures on either side completely gone up in flames
That's wild.
at that point.
So
And then
a day
one
later-
day later, we have the same
But
notes.
wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more fire and death
Was
and
that
destruction.
in Heswall?
Yeah, Heswall. Yep.
A pair of the paintings were hanging in the living room and dining rooms of a house belonging to the Amos family, and they were found intact after a gas explosion destroyed the building.
So, but at least for
This is
that one, we
crazy.
know like what the source was. It was a gas
So
explosion.
that was a different. Right.
I mean, for
So
a
it
lot of
wasn't
these,
it wasn't a mystery.
Yeah,
Like,
it wasn't a
it's okay,
mystery. It
this
was a
happened.
gas explosion, but the painting
Probably a propane
was
tank or something.
The painting was present in the building at the
And
time.
it didn't get destroyed.
Right, right. And then next month, November 1985, that was just a month after Marty McFly went back in time. But that's
far out.
neither here nor there. In November 1985, one woman from Leeds who destroyed her picture of the crying boy seems certain that its destruction was to blame for the deaths in a fire of her husband and 3 sons. So, I mean, now there's husband, 3 sons. There's 4 deaths involved
Yeah, that's
in this
crazy.
fire in 1985. I mean, you got to think, then these, it's like, yeah, they could be coincidences, but like, also we have like September, 3 in October, now 1 in November.
Yeah, all
Like,
in a string.
all
That's
in a
very
string,
close.
and all in kind of like the same area of the world, you know,
Right.
it's
Well, that's where the painting was.
that's
very
where the paintings
popular.
were distributed and stuff.
Mrs. Woodward of Forest Hill, London, destroyed her picture.
She saw that coming. She was like, nope, get this bad juju out of my house.
Well, because she had lost her son, her daughter, her husband, and mother in separate fire-related incidents.
Yeah, so I'm thinking this is like...
she was like, I'm just getting rid of this.
Yeah, prior to, she's like, no, I'm not going to play with this. Also in November 1985, Malcolm Vaughn of Church Down helped to destroy a neighbor's picture. He returned home to find his own living room ablaze for reasons for which firemen were unable to explain.
That is
so
wild.
it's really crazy, like how this painting is like the center of so many fires, either explained or unexplained. But I mean, I know they were mass produced, but it's like, it really begs the question, like, how many of these paintings went out to all of these homes, and then how were all of them so involved with these fires?
Right.
You know,
it's really wild. This last one here, if you want to read it, it's pretty bad.
I'll let you read it.
Okay.
William Armitage.
In December of 1985, he was 67.
Only a month later, like it's all.
William
It's
Armitage.
it really is like back to back to back.
He passed away in a fire that swept through his house, and he lived in Avon. And it was discovered that a picture of the crying boy was found lying intact right next to him. And he was burnt up, right? And the fireman who dealt with the blaze afterwards was quoted as saying, and I'll read the quote. He's like, "I've never believed in the jinx up until now, but when you actually come across a picture in a gutted room and it's literally the only thing that hasn't been touched, it is most odd."
Yeah, I mean, and then after that story, other reports started coming in claiming the same thing happened. Homes destroyed by the fire. The crying boy painting was always survived. Like it was always unscathed by the fire.
So I don't know if it was originally Yorkshire, Hall's initial quote that got into the Sun newspaper. They kind of ran with the story after it came out that they, because other firefighters had seen this and people were like, "Oh, you don't think that's odd?" And like Dylan said earlier, that's what got it into the popular domain, and into the news cycle, so to speak. And they printed story after story after story of this and said, "Hey, if you need help destroying these paintings, feel free to, we'll help out, send them in." And they actually got a ton of them. I think it was like 2,500 paintings or something. Is that true? That
Could
people
be.
sent in of these prints to destroy them.
Crazy.
And like a massive bonfire. And they actually did do that. I don't remember the date of that, but it was like a thing that was kind of media coverage there. It was there, right? So it's kind of weird.
Well,
So obviously they burnt in a big pile when they did that. In the picture that we saw online, there weren't frames and stuff on them. So they weren't covered in glass. It was just the prints themselves, which I thought that was kind of an odd thing. And people really responded to it. If you're wondering like how common this painting is, it's still supposedly worth between $275 and $350. So it's not super cheap, but it's not, it's not $1 million painting or anything. And it's still being sold at auctions, and I think you can buy them on eBay and stuff. Like I wonder the actual one.
And it's not something you've heard about in the recent years, I don't think. So
no.
But let's. I want to talk about some of the theories around this. Like, theories, we'll go into the supernatural theories, and then we'll go into kind of the painting, and then we'll go into the rational explanation. So, supernatural theories, of course, would be that the artist himself was cursed, and that he himself projected that curse onto the paintings, possibly in connection to the sad emotional state of the children that he painted. So maybe not like sad. Intentional. Maybe he was. I don't know. Like maybe he could have been touched by El Diablo. I don't know. I don't know.
That one seems pretty far-fetched.
Pretty far-fetched. There's the tragic backstory suggesting that the boy depicted in the painting, as well as some of the other children that he painted, were from tragic stories themselves, like the original story I said. The boy who was an orphan whose parents died in a fire, and he later died in a fire, which I don't give a lot of credence to. But it's said that his spirit believes to be trapped in that painting, causing similar disasters.
Okay,
so so he's just part of that curse, I guess. Right. There's the stubborn spirit theory saying that the crying child's ghost speaks vengeance, leading to the belief that perhaps the painting invites disaster into one's home.
It's wild.
Yeah, no, it is wild. It's one of those things where you're just like, if you just hear that like right away, you're like, that's crazy talk. That's just dumb. But there's a lot of crazy coincidences here.
There's too
that
many.
really do
it's
make
it's
almost too many coincidences.
Yeah. And I mean, people go off on conspiracy theories based off of one likely coincidence, let alone something like this.
I mean, and we've seen that happen a lot in the past, obviously, So, I mean, like we see that, like, somebody says something and then somebody says something, and then before you know it, like it catches on. And that could have been the case with this. Maybe there was like 2 fires, if I just had to like speculate here, and both of them had this painting involved, and we know they were mass produced. Well, now all of a sudden people are looking for that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I don't know how many fires would regularly occur in England in the 1980s, but
probably standard amount,
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's any more or less than anywhere else.
It's like, you remember like, remember like when we were kids, like in the 80s, and your grandmother always had, there was like a ceramic crock pot that was white that had like blue flowers painted on it, and you probably like already think like, yep, I remember that one, because like everybody's grandparents had that same crock pot.
I've seen that one. Yeah.
If I showed you a picture, you would be like,
I probably recognize it.
Because I'm like,
I remember seeing the crock pots. There's like a brown one. And
I mean, it's just the things that like everybody had, and like those become memes. Like they would be like, oh yeah, these are the crock pots that your grandmother had, and you looked at it and you're like, holy shit, my grandmother did have those. You know what I mean?
Like the chairs, the kitchen chairs.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe there was like a specific, like, a specific. I'm trying not to draw a comparison to a painting, but like something else. But there was something that was a very common household item at the time that like everybody's family seemed to have back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that could have just been the case. It really could have been the thing was just so mass produced that so many people just had this painting in England in the 1980s. And then there was so many of them distributed across these houses. And then when there was a fire, they're like, oh, they had the painting. Well, yeah, so did like hundreds of thousands of other people. But, could have just been that. But let's connect that to the rational explanation of what it could have been, and that is the material of the painting on which these were mass produced.
Yeah.
So I mean, we tried to debunk it a little bit, but some firemen speculated that the paintings were printed on a fire retardant material, which would explain why they would often survive the fires.
And canvas itself is not very flame retardant, as I know it.
No,
right?
Unless it's coated in something.
It must
maybe.
be. Yeah, if it's coated. But that particular run of canvases could have been coated in something.
Yeah, but maybe none of them were like on necessarily a canvas. Maybe they were on like some other material, because it was printed. It was 1985. They could do that in 85.
Yeah, you could print it on sheet metal or anything, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how that works, but
yeah, I mean, and then as I was just saying, like in the widespread belief of the curse.
Well, I was sorry, not to cut you off. I was always under the impression that if you bought a print, maybe different times there are different things, that the real artist would touch them up so that you got something from the real artist. That I know that I don't think all of them are like that. But I
don't have anything.
And if this
here,
thing was mass produced, it probably wasn't one of those types of prints. Yeah, like if it's like 200 or something like that, maybe they would paint a little bit on there.
Well, the widespread belief here is that the curse could have caused people to blame any house fire on the presence of the painting. Is kind of the point I was getting to, creating kind of a feedback loop of fear and superstition here.
Right.
But of course, the newspaper took a role in spreading the story as well. This would be from The Sun in 1985. After the initial story was published, The Sun continued to run articles about the crying boy curse, with more and more people coming forward with their own stories of house fire. Now, The Sun was famously kind of a tabloid. I think it still is. I don't know if it's still in print.
I'm not sure.
But I remember seeing copies of The Sun in supermarkets when I was a kid, and it was very much like Bat Boy found in cave kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Obviously, it's their version of it over there, but yeah, same kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the tabloid, because this is like pre-internet, Oh, yeah. You would see a copy of The Sun, and it would be like, Bad boy found in cave, and you're like
Bad boy.
Yeah, what? And you look at it and you're like, I know this is bullshit. You pick it up and you'd be like, I know this is bullshit, but this looks entertaining, right? And you would just pick it up, and it was fine. But they would just print nonsense.
It's sold tabloids.
But it was based on sensationalism at that point, because it was just entertaining, but. So many people would pick it up and be like, "Did you hear about the crying boy?" You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the crying boy painting. and that just kind of made it part of pop culture in the UK. Now, they did, as you mentioned earlier, organize mass burnings of the Crying Boy paintings because it was almost kind of like a hysteria. They're like, this painting is evil.
Let's get rid of
it and if you have a Crying Boy painting, bring it and we'll burn it. And this kind of led to like a public catharsis, I guess, of the curse and natural phenomenon. So, but people even went so far as to call in priests to do exorcisms and blessings of their homes. They tried to rid their homes of the curse by having priests bless the paintings or perform exorcisms on the paintings or the house. Some people threw their painting into the rivers or burned them in their backyards in an effort to escape the curse. So, it was, but some people who did burn the paintings said it was difficult to set the painting on fire, which you can go either way on that. Like, was it because it was on a flame retardant material, or was it because the painting itself was cursed?
Well, we may never know. What I think it is because it was on a flame.
I mean, that's the most logical explanation, right?
Well, either that or it was covered in a type. Well, lacquer's usually super flammable from what I remember in art class, but maybe it was covered in a type 2 that was also had some fire retardant material or properties.
No, you're not wrong. Yeah. And studies do suggest that there was a protective lacquer used on the paintings.
Oh, there you go. That
might have contributed to their survival
but I read that.
But you read that though.
Yeah.
That's a carryover from Zumundo.
We actually watched a video of somebody burning one of these paintings and it didn't burn.
Not well. Yeah.
And not like in the big fire. We did see something like that, but somebody did like a test burn of it in a frame, and the frame burnt, but the painting just kind of fizzled out. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there is some truth to that so, it doesn't burn very well.
I mean, I would say that the curse of the Crying Boy painting
itself is probably not.
I feel like for the most part, it's kind of debunked. Right. But the legend lives on.
It does.
But why does the story still haunt people decades later?
Because they were affected by it, or they knew somebody affected by it.
Yeah.
And that's in neighborhoods, stories get crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and this has kind of become a staple of paranormal folklore, particularly for our friends over there overseas in the pond, and it's still kind of shared online. Paranormal circles, probably ghost walks. I'm sure they do it.
I'm sure they talk
over there. Chris, if you're listening, do they still do it over there? Like you tell us, man. Like you could write us at Zumundo@outlook.com. And
do you have a Crying Boy?
Do you have a Crying Boy painting in your house? And if so, is it still standing?
Or would you hang one?
Would you hang one? I probably wouldn't.
I would not.
I mean, the thing is, like, it's funny because I'm like, it's debunked. Would you hang one? Hell no.
No. I'm not messing with that. Come on, man.
No, absolutely not, man.
Yeah, there's just too many accounts. You just scroll through them. People have fires, and I mean, now, if you have to like run across the fire, it might be a good thing to have one to throw down on top of it. But either way, I don't see myself owning one of those.
It's kind of funny though. In the recent years, it's become something of a collectible for people interested in
really
the paranormal and stuff like that.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if we go online right now and we check.
They're for sale.
Let's check it real quick.
I mean, we looked. I looked at the price, and there's definitely some for sale on eBay.
Yeah, just pull it up real quick. Like I'm going to talk for a minute while you pull it up and stuff. Like you tell me. All right, what is a print of the Crying Boy painting going for now?
Well, they say they're worth $275 to $350. There's one buy it now, $144.75.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy it.
100% feedback on it, and it's that one.
It's that same one.
It's got the blue background, the kid. It's creepy. I'm not buying this. I'm getting out of this. I'm getting out of this.
Get it off your screen.
Here, I'm going to look it up proper and see how many of them are online.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But, in recent years...
it comes right up because people obviously search this all the time.
People search it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch. There's a $25 print. The one that... So that's weird. It's the same kid, but the background's different in some of them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, about $100, $144 is $169 of one of his other paintings. There's one with a violin that's $338. There's a bunch of paintings like this in the series. You can tell that some of them are from the series for sure. $325, $300. These ones are probably more rare. Yeah, creepy.
Wow, it's crazy. Well, listen, whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the story of the Crying Boy painting taps into something universal. Maybe it's our fear of the unknown or the idea that an ordinary object could hold extraordinary power. But think about the belief of curses. And if you have any thoughts on that, please send us an email, and we would love to talk to you about it on the air, zumundo@outlook.com. But I think that's going to wrap it up for today for Zumundous. I'm Doolin.
And I'm Keith.
And thanks for hanging out with us in the realm of the mysterious. We'll see you next week. Have a Zumundous week, everybody.
Yeah.
Woo. Man, I don't want to take any pictures of a crying boy.
No, not at all.
I feel like I don't.
Zumundous.